Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ratumas Milawati Putri, student number 4031800031. I want to explain about book report novel. The title is The Snow Child. Introduction. The novel which I want to report is The Snow Child. That is written by Eowyn Ivey. This novel was published by Little Brown and Company in February 2012. The Snow Child novel is consists of 54 chapters, include the epilogue and 400 pages. Eowyn Ivey was raised in Alaska and continued to live there with her husband and two daughters. She received her BA in journalism and minor in creative writing through the honors program at Western Washington University. Studied creative nonfiction at the University of Alaska and encouraged graduate program and worked for nearly 10 years as an award-winning reporter at the Frontiersman newspaper. The Snow Child is informed by Eowyn life in Alaska. Her husband is a fishery biologist with the state of Alaska. While they both work outside of the home, they are also raising their daughters in the rural, largely subsistence lifestyle in which they were both raised. The next is characters. Mabel. Mabel was the wife of Jack. She is one of the main characters in the novel. She and Jack came to Alaska to enjoy the peace and quiet and to reconnect with one another. Mabel had no children, although she had wanted children desperately. She'd given birth to only one baby who had been stillborn. She'd not even helped the baby or know what gender it was. 10 years after the baby was born, she still felt guilty because she hadn't done so. It had been Mabel's idea to come to Alaska because she believed that being away from children and pregnant women would relieve her feeling of uselessness and failure. Instead, Mabel was depressed to the point of considering suicide when the novel opened. The next character is Jack. Jack was the husband of Mabel. He is one of the main characters in the novels. Jack meanwhile dealt with his own problems as he struggled to tame field for crops and feed himself and Mabel over the winter. He'd just about decided to work in the coal mine over the winter when a neighbor family befriended him and Mabel. The next is Faina. This little girl who calls herself Faina seems to be a child of the woods. She hunts with a red fox at her side, skims lightly across the snow, and somehow survives alone in the Alaskan wilderness. As Jack and Mabel struggle to understand this child who could have stepped from the pages of a fairy tale, they come to love her as their own daughter. But in this beautiful, violent place, things are rarely as they appear, and what they eventually learn about Faina will transform all of them. She was a fascinating character, mysterious and otherworldly, but with a charm and vulnerability that made it easy to understand why a lonely middle-aged couple would welcome her into their lives. Summary. Mabel encouraged her husband Jack to take a change and move to Alaska. so she could get away from the sounds of children, which to her were reminders that she was childless. In the book The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey, when they befriended a mysterious young girl named Faina who lived alone in the Alaskan wilderness, Jack and Mabel became surrogate parents for this child. Through their experience with Faina and the work they dedicate to their new life in Alaska, Mabel and Jack grew closer to one another and their relationship matured. When they lost Faina, the two were able to grieve together, something they had not been able to do when they lost their infant son years before. For years, Mabel and Jack were the only ones who ever saw Faina, although they had told their neighbor friends about her. The neighbors doubted her existence until they happened to visit the cabin one day while Faina was there. Their son Garrett fell in love with Faina. In the course of their relationship, Faina got pregnant. It was when Garrett went to Jack to ask for Faina's hand in marriage that Jack realized that he and Mabel had become Faina's parents. Unfortunately, Faina's childbirth was long and hard. She never fully recovered and soon became sick with a fever. She, she begged to be taken out in the snow, so Garrett fixed her a bed of furs to lie on outside. While outside, Faina disappeared. All that remained of her was her clothes still between the furs between which she had been laying, although they had never been able to comfort each other after the loss of their own baby. Jack and Mabel had matured to the point that they grieved together over Fina's death. And the last is conclusion. In Eowyn Ivey's magical debut novel The Snow Child, a couple creates a child out of snow. When she appears on their doorstep as a little girl, wild and secretive, their lives are changed forever. Alaska, Alaska, Alaska 1920, a brutal place to homestead and especially tough for a couple who have never been able to conceive. Jack and Mabel are drifting apart, he breaking under the weight of the work of the farm, she crumbling from loneliness and despair. In a moment of levity during the season's first snowfall, they build a child out of snow. The next morning, the snow child is gone, but they catch sight of an elusive blonde-haired girl running through the trees. Faina, this little girl who calls herself Faina, seems to be a child of the woods. She hunts with a red fox at her side, skims lightly across the snow, and leaves blizzard in her wake. As Jack and Mabel struggle to understand this child who seems to have stepped from the page of a fairy tale, they come to love her as their own daughter. But in the Alaska wilderness, life and death are inextricable, and what they eventually learn about Faina changed their life forever. Eowyn was inspired to write the novel after she discovered the classic Russian fairy tale of the Snow Maiden. She was shelving books in the children's section of Fireside books When the Sea Happened across a copy of Freya Little Dell, retelling of the fairy tale with illustrations by Alaska artist Barbara Lavallee. The story haunted Eowyn with its lone lines and magic in a landscape so similar to the one she grew up in. She spent the next few months researching the original tale and the depiction of it in Russian artwork. Before she began writing, The Snow Child has been described as a remarkable stunningly conceived and enchanting from the beginning to the end. Okay, thank you for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.